Hello, you amazing friends. I'm with the legendary Shaun Tucker today. How you doing today, Shaun?
Hey Edward, I'm Sean. Doing really well, man. How's yourself?
It's been pretty good. I got to say, I loved our Zoom chat before, and this is your first StreamYard experience. What do you think so far after 8 seconds of it?
Oh, it's looks pretty cool from what you said. Like streaming all over the different platforms, like that's next level. Love it.
Now, firstly, I was honored to meet you via the legendary Adrian Lee. Isn't Adrian Lee not only handsome but a great guy?
Adrian is yeah, awesome dude. Like I met him in person when we could, 6 to 8 months ago now, and we went to this awesome cafe, had a good feast and a good old talk. It was awesome. Great dude. Highly recommend.
Now, tell us all about you. What are you up to? What are you working on? Is that a photo of you and your wonderful young lady on the wall over your left shoulder and more?
Yes, so that's my wife Jacinda in the background there, over there, and myself. That was around 8 years ago. So we've been together going on, I think, 9 years this year. Time's going really fast. And yeah, she's from Singapore. And basically, what I do for work is I'm a personal trainer, or that's was what I was doing previously to all the lockdowns and things. And sort of in the last 12 months or so, we've entered the space of health and wellness entrepreneurial stuff. So I guess you could call myself a health and wellness entrepreneur. So we kind of, me and my business partner Nick Bergmans. So shout out to Nick Bergmans. We basically get busy parents who don't have a lot of time. We work with them online and face to face a lot of the time, and basically they come in with different ailments, and our job is to kind of just reset them back to a good balance using different technologies and things like that to kind of speed up the process. We also use a little bit of kinesiology to kind of identify where the stresses are, so that way we can kind of quickly take them where they need to go.
Now, I can directly relate, as you know. Now, by the way, I know you're from Melbourne, and I absolutely feel for you guys. Like, I'm not here to rip into your government, but if I was, I would, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but we just finished a 100-day lockdown in Sydney, right? Um, I kept up my health actually. Now I probably put on about 3 or 4 kilos.
Hmm.
I do 100 push-ups a day. I kept up the walking, but you know the deal. It's easy to put on weight during lockdowns. And
Yeah,
we actually ran
absolutely.
our first face-to-face event yesterday, and everyone's got the same male, female, black, white, gay, straight. We've all got the same problem. Everyone's out of shape, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think now is the time that people need that help because they're realizing that after, well, being in Victoria, the last 6 lockdowns or so have really just pushed people to the brink of exhaustion, really. And they need us, they need our help.
And that brings my next question. I want to ask you, how do you and I know a lot of people watching are going to be feeling this. How do you rebound after a long lockdown? You've been locked up, you've put on weight, you don't feel good. How do you rebound after such a long lockdown? What are some of the things that you do and you look for?
I think the best thing you can do is to really see if you can ground yourself first. So find in what I mean by grounding yourself is actually get out in nature a little bit, because that'll just help reset your body. So if you're carrying a lot of this negative energy and positive ions, as you could call them, what it does is it your body carries that charge until you're sort of out in nature and actually getting your feet and your hands in the dirt, because that'll take your ions out of your body, and then you kind of back to what you should be a little bit mentally anyway. And from that point, I guess the next best thing you can do is start moving. And if you need help, like, reach out. There's no harm in reaching out.
And so I get it. So be it you can swim if you're near the ocean, you can swim on the beach, you can go for a walk. Getting moving now. Now, I made this mistake, and I was telling this before. Through a lot of lockdown, some days I'd walk 7 steps a day, right? I went from
Hmm.
walking literally, open Sydney. I went from walking probably 12,000 steps a day to about 12 steps a day. And as you can tell, if you cut your steps back that much, you get out of shape. I've started walking again, and it's funny actually. the first day I walked I used to walk easily 20,000 steps a day, no problem.
Yeah, wow.
I walked 10,000 steps the other day and it almost killed me. All right.
No doubt, no doubt. When the body stops moving, essentially it doesn't need the muscle there because it's trying to find ways that it can stop using the energy, if that makes sense. Like it's trying to be as efficient as possible. So if it doesn't use it, it'll lose it.
Uh, how do you ease back into things? Because I think the other day I went to the city, right? And basically first day of lockdown, I walked about 24,000 steps literally the other day.
Wow, that's a
And
lot of
my
steps.
body still hates me. 4 months ago, I could do this fine. I did that the other day. I almost killed myself, right?
Hmm.
How do you sort of ease back into things? I'm doing a very poor job of easing back into things. What are your tips on that one?
So for especially like success driven people like yourself, Edward, like it's hard for people to kind of go slow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah,
because we're kind of, I guess, extremists in that sense is that we kind of we evaluate or reflect what we used to do, and then we kind of go like just go as
yeah,
fast as we can in that direction. And a lot of the time that catches our bodies that aren't prepared off guard, and it
totally,
can actually it can
totally.
actually
I got really sick the other day. Not good.
it can do a lot more damage than good, unfortunately, because then you're crook for like a week, like you can't
Yeah,
move properly for like a week. And I guess my best piece of advice is try and put yourself in your body as much as you can, because your body's going to indicate a lot of what it's trying to tell you. It'll communicate through different things. So a lot of the time we spend most of our time up in here in our mental psychology, but we also have a body like our bodies carry so much intelligence in there that if we just sort of slow down and pay attention to it for a second, that's when we'll find like the gold in what we're supposed to do, especially when it comes to movement and going a little bit more slowly. So, even like I was a little bit sick a couple weeks ago. So I'm actually just getting back into training this week, and I haven't actually had a break in the last few days. But the very first day I got back into it, I
Oh, was it
had
like a
to,
truck ran you over?
yeah, essentially, like I was pretty well dead. Like my central nervous system was completely burned out after about an hour, 30 minutes of my training session. After an hour of waiting, and then I was just kaput. But I only did like one set on each exercise. That's all I did, and that was enough to completely cook me because my what happens is it's not so much a muscular standpoint, but it's actually the neurology that actually loses its connection to your muscles. And it because it's trying to preserve as much energy as it can, it yeah, it'll find lots of ways to preserve that energy. But when it develops that again, it hasn't been lost, but it's just lost that really efficient communication to your muscle. So that's why you get a lot of that DOMS and the muscle soreness when you get back into exercise, and people incorrectly search for the muscle soreness when they're exercising, and that's something that is not necessarily an indicator of much. It's just it really hurts when you have it.
Yeah. This is funny. It was what happened to me. So, as you know, so we're doing this interview on Saturday, the 23rd of October. Our lockdown ended on Monday, right? So a few days ago.
Hmm.
And typical Edwards here, ex-military nut, right? I just assumed, oh yeah, let's just get back to it. So I literally went from sitting around my home for 4 months. I
Yeah,
wasn't. I did go for walks and shit, but you know what I mean. I like at the end, it's a lockdown, right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I thought, oh yeah, let's just go to the city and let's just walk 25,000 steps. Let's have 4 meetings and let's take photos everywhere. And so what happened to me was about 4 p.m., my body just shut down on me in the city. I got the worst headache, and and I had to sit down. I was like an old man. I was like an old man sitting in a bus. Right? My body just said, "I quit." Right, and I
Yep.
had to literally drag myself back home, and everyone laughed at me. So when I got home, I think, fed the kids, lied down at 7 o'clock, and I think I woke up the next day, basically. Right. My
Wow.
body just hated me. Was that because of those reasons? My body was unprepared. My nervous system was pissed off at me. Is that all? Is that right?
That's exactly right. So your nervous
Yeah.
system was just very unprepared for that kind of volume, I guess you could say. So yeah, when you're getting into exercise and health and fitness and things like that, when you start moving your body, it's
Mm,
really important to take it slow, especially when you've
mm,
had a long time off, because it takes takes a long time to build those connections,
yeah.
but it's quite easy to lose them too. It's
Yeah.
the most,
Yeah.
I guess, annoying part, but it's also one of the reasons why training and movement is one of the most exciting things about it, is that it you can't bluff it. You can't
Yeah.
cheat your way through it.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself in the trenches to get what you want.
Yeah. This is talking to the positive now. I'm finding I'm actually, whilst I had a very, very long, difficult day, I actually find I'm actually rebounding fairly quickly. Whilst that was a rough day, overall, I feel
Mhm.
like I'm rebounding quickly. It only takes a few weeks to rebound. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very quick because, like I said, it's like, I guess you could give it a little bit of a metaphor in saying that, there's a bit of dust on those neurons that are connecting to your muscle. So when that dust and debris has sort of cleared, so you've gone in and dusted it by engaging in a bit of movement over a week, or I'd say a 1 to 3 week period of time,
Yeah.
you can sort of get back your strength that you had quite quickly. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I remember the first time. So what I did was, I live near a beautiful park called Parramatta Park. Right, it's a big park, probably one of the
Hmm.
biggest parks in Sydney.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
the lap is literally 5.1. It's like 4.9, 5.1 kilometers. So the lap is like basically 5Ks, right?
Yeah, that's pretty long lap.
Yeah, it's a good lap. And so I did about 2 weeks ago. I just walked a lap of it, right?
Hmm.
And pre-lockdown, I could walk 10 laps if I wanted to, no sweat. I did one lap of it, and it felt like I rode a horse the next day.
Yeah, that'd be enough.
Yeah.
Where did you feel the muscle soreness mostly? Because this
It
can
was
be a
literally
huge
riding a
area.
horse. It was like the inner thighs, the hamstrings, my glutes weren't talking to me for a few days. It's just funny how when you're when you've been cooped up for so long, literally, I just went for a walk. It felt like I rode a horse for with John Wayne for 20 kilometers. It was crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Did you feel it more on one side than the other, or was it kind of balanced?
Actually, I did. I felt it a lot on the left side. I don't know why, but it really
Mm.
hurt on the left side. Why is that?
So that could be a really good indicator that something might not be sitting right. So
Mm.
there's three fundamental areas that you look at for balance, right?
Ooh,
So
okay.
you've got your pelvis,
Mhm.
and if your pelvis is out, so it's not aligned correctly,
Yep.
there's usually a couple of different places where it can actually affect and pull your pelvis out of alignment. Because
Mm.
unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the way you look at it, is the body is all connected, like, together as one unit. And this is why I'm not so great. I mean, not so much a fan of isolation sort of stuff, especially in
Yeah.
the gym. Working it as a unit makes a lot more sense to me.
Hmm.
Um,
Logical.
yeah, but what actually happens is you've got these foot pad sensors, and you've got some in your neck and your ears as well. What can happen, and this is very, very common because we do all these poor movements all the time, is that your ankle or your neck might be slightly out of alignment, and that pulls your whole body in a direction that it shouldn't be in. So that means
Mm.
your pelvis, where your posterior superior iliac spine, the two little bony bits at the bottom of your back, if they're not perfectly aligned or sort of symmetrical in some sense, they may not be perfectly symmetrical, and that's pretty normal. But when you're doing the forward bend test and you've got someone
Mm.
testing that, they can see if it's moving or catching on one side than the other, and then that comes into the other side has to compensate a lot more because all of the connective tissue, all of the bony structures have to manipulate and move to
Mm,
compensate for that point that's out, if that makes sense.
gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
it's kind of complicated, but it's also very simple fix, because most of the time it's either an ankle or it's a neck that's sort of just been shoved in one direction where it should have been in more neutral position.
Ah, well, there you go. Well, there you go. So I tried to commit suicide on Wednesday, which is not a good move, but I'm much better now.
Yeah, that's good
That,
to
that
hear.
brings me to another point, actually, and I know we answered this, but I'll bring it up for more humorous sake. When I was 19, I went off and joined the army, right, as you do. And I remember, and you know where I'm going here, my first, and apparently a lot of people had trouble. My first 3 days of basic training almost broke us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I, I went from pretty much just being a relative couch potato to literally up 5 a.m., basically running around like a lunatic till 10 o'clock every night.
Yeah,
And
wow.
I remember a lot of us, even though I was a young, handsome 19-year-old then, I remember after 3 days, apparently they always say day 4 to 5 is the hardest. Day 4, you can't move. Day 4, everyone's body is telling you to get stuffed. And I remember quite a few people actually quit about then. I remember quite a few people quit.
Yep,
They just
yep.
could not get through day 4. I struggled. I had to drag myself throughout the day. Is that
Hmm.
because of what you taught? Is that just your body just saying, I can't handle this? And
Yeah,
is
it's. I don't know if it's more of I would say it's coming from your body, because it's the neurons that are firing back and they're sending messages like stop.
yeah.
But where the human spirit has a lot more in there that can just kind of push through a lot more. So that's where that mental toughness comes in a little bit. And
Uh,
you sound like a pretty mentally tough guy, Edward. So
in those days, I look back at my older self and yeah, we actually, you're going to like this actually. It's a little bit violent, but I think you'll like it. But we actually, in the military, you have this test. It's a very veteran thing to say what I'm about to say, right? But you have this test
yeah.
saying, could you go back in time and beat yourself up, right?
I love it. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, but so if you could go back in time and beat yourself up, you're doing well fitness wise, is what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's
So
cool. I
I
like
think I could go back in time and easily beat myself up, which is a good thing, right? Which
it.
is,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
is a good thing because I remember I was because I had a pretty, I used to be the little fat kid at school and all that. I
Hmm.
remember I was very nervous that when I was probably 10 times more nervous than everyone else because I'm like, man, do I have the strength to get through? I did, but obviously I did. But it was just crazy. I remember just when you first shock, when you overshock your body is not a good thing. They obviously do it deliberately as part of the training, but yeah,
That's
it's not a
right.
good thing, I think.
It's I think what they do to weed out the people that are less, I guess, mentally tough is they put them through those psychological operations. So yes, it's very physical, but the whole point of it is to kind of break people's psychology.
I was broken. Don't you worry about that. I was already broken the first 10 minutes when I rocked up. I was already broken.
It's all about the guys that get knocked down and get back up and go again.
Yeah. Now, on that note, yeah, that's exactly where I was going, and I'm glad we're in sync. So, in terms of that, right, resilience, right, resilience, and now I can tell, like, even though we've only met each other recently, it's like I've known you forever. I can tell you're a resilient guy.
Hmm.
A lot of people right now, and I don't blame them, are struggling with resilience, right? In terms of like they've lost jobs, they've lost relationships, or more like me, they're successful business wise and relationship wise, but they just haven't had the physical activity, right?
Yep.
What do you say to people who want more resilience that possibly lack it? What's your words of encouragement to those people watching?
I'd say if you're really struggling with resilience, is start with something small. Like make one, even if you're really struggling, like a lot of people are really mentally struggling, make one promise to yourself and keep it. Like end of the day, that's what gets the result, is that one thing. Because a lot of these people there, or a lot of people that I've come in contact with, even pre all this lockdowns and things like that, is they put themselves in these extreme, they hold themselves to these extreme standards that they can't um, replicate on a day-to-day basis. So what the best thing you can do is keep that one promise for that one day and extend that for a week. See if you can do that for a week. If you've done it for a week, add a second task. And
Ooh.
then basically just build that. It's like building a house. You don't really lay your bricks all at one time, right? You're
Yeah.
putting one brick down, layering it, another brick down. And that's kind of exactly how you got to build that resilience. Because when you get to that level, it's not like you come in and just knock it down. It's like the house just doesn't fall down like that unless you're exploding it quite literally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's going to break, but you can then rebuild it, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense, Shaun. I love where you're going. Now, Shaun, I was just going to ask you as well. I know you're a busy man, and thank you for your time. I just want to
Thank you.
ask you, what are some of your just general top health tips you want to give to our fans around? What are your top 3 tips? Just the general legendary person watching us. Top 3 health tips. What have you got for everyone?
I'll give one for like physical movement and stuff like that, and I'll give one for nutrition and probably just a mindset as well. So
Perfect.
the one for movement, I'd say, is if anyone's heard of it or done anything like it, I'm probably a good person to ask is yourself because you were in the military, like you said before. Um, what kind of movements did they have you doing when you were in the military, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. It was anything from a lot of walking, a lot of running, just like Full Metal Jacket. It was a lot like Full Metal Jacket, if you ever watched that movie.
Yeah,
And I remember the biggest thing that just messed me up is they gave us, you know, how you've got posts, right? Basically, round wooden posts in parks. We
yeah.
had to actually bicep them and throw them to each other, right?
Oh, what the hell?
And out
I
of
like,
everything, and for whatever reason, that was always the most traumatic exercise I did because you'd have like a buddy next to you and you literally be doing this motion and you literally pass it to someone else, right?
hmm
And I remember there was this one day where I was it was about day 4, I think. I could barely just do that, right? I was just that messed up in the arms. I could barely hold a fence. But and it wasn't the other one. The guy next to me had the same problem, right?
Yeah.
And I remember it was that motion which I was struggling. So I could do that, but quite often you'd have to hand an object. I lost basically all my strength there just through overwork. And
Yeah,
to
yeah.
this day, I'm still obviously traumatized by that.
No, I get that. Were you having to do a lot of crawls and things like that as well when you were training? Do you
Not
remember?
really. Look, the answer was not really, and that never really bothered me.
Okay. Yep.
Well, one of the things that actually bothered me, I used to really suck at this, was jumping, like jumping over walls, I'd struggle with. Right, I have some weird. Oh, they were really good, by the way. They got me through it, but I had this weird phobia where you have a wall, right, and you run up the wall and bounce over it, like you jump
hmm
up. I just couldn't do it. I would just freak out. I wasn't the only one. A lot of people had this weird wall phobia, which they helped me get over. And I remember it was basically jumping over walls and that weird motion of holding an object with those muscles. To this day, still traumatizes me.
It's probably something we can work with actually.
There you go.
Kinesiology stuff. That's cool. But yeah, I guess my point being, and I know that like the Spartan races, those kind of like adventure races, they
Mm,
do a lot of crawling, right? And
okay.
what I mean by crawling is when you're a baby, the very first thing you learn to kind of navigate and explore the world is how to use your head and how to
Yeah.
actually use your spine to kind of roll over. So when you're in the womb, you're actually not necessarily kicking, but you're probably more rolling around.
Yeah.
And that's one of the very first things we start with. And then we
Mm,
build into these crawling patterns, which is kind of lost. And whenever I get someone to do one, your body works in like opposite limb kind of movement. So when you're right, say when you go to open a door, what foot would go forward if you're opening it with your right hand? It would be your left foot, right?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So you're always working in those spiral patterns. So
Yeah,
you're
gotcha.
when you go for your crawl, ideally your right hand will move forward, your left leg will move forward, and then the opposite.
Oh, yeah,
That kind
yeah,
of makes sense. So we kind
yeah,
of that's where we start, and it's one of the last exercises of it, but this is really good for desk workers and things like that. It's called a
yeah.
cross crawl,
Yeah,
and
okay,
all it does is it kind of crosses your energies over. So you can do it
okay.
in a chair or you can do it standing, and basically you have your arms up and you
Yeah,
want to touch your knee. So I'll just
Oh
do it
yeah.
here, and you're
Yeah.
basically
Oh
that.
yeah.
And you do that for
Oh,
say
that
30
actually
seconds to
feels
a
good on
minute,
the back. My back's
and
liking it.
it'll
Oh,
help with productivity.
it's unlocking my pissed off back from all the lockdown.
Look at all that. That's awesome. So
My pissed off
that's a
back is loving it.
it'll actually, because a lot of the time when you look at energy work and things like that, our energies are stuck moving one direction. They should be moving both directions, and they should be moving in like figure eights.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So what that actually does, that pattern, is it crosses them over, and it helps you become more productive in your day, and it also just helps mentally reset you a little bit.
I like it. Man, what else? That's a good move. What else you got for us, Shaun?
So the second thing I was going to say was a nutrition thing. So fundamentally, I wanted to talk a little bit about salt. Salt has had a bad name for quite a while.
I love salt. I ate a lot of salt.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily salt in general, but the rawer you can get your salt, the better it is. So we
Like
are
sea
very
salt. I eat we eat sea salt. Sea salt's good, right?
sea salts. It's okay, but you've got all of the toxins of the metal, like heavy metals and things that are also in the ocean as well, which is
Yeah.
not the best, right? The We're very fortunate in Australia. We've got a very it's kind of like an ancient salt that we have here. It's called Murray River salt, and if you guys have
Okay.
never heard it or tried it, it is I want to say it's the god of salt
So this is like
because
the Bentley. Is this like the Rolls Royce of salt? Is it?
it is a gourmet salt, but it actually can help so many different things on so many different levels
Mm.
because it's got all of the trace minerals in there, and it doesn't have, like, that I know of, any of the toxins that are potentially in some of the other salts that are heavily marketed and people use in their health.
What about Himalayan pink salt? What do you think of that? Is that just marketing or is that not
un-
shit? Just marketing.
Unfortunately, it's not the best. It is
Marketing.
better
Okay.
than it is better than some of like table salts and different salts like that. But yeah, it's not the greatest. It's
Yeah.
still better than some, but not the
Yeah.
best one you can get.
I'm sure. Pardon me if you're in us, but a bit of trivia for you. I'm a bit of a historian, right? A bit of a military historian.
Yeah,
During
awesome.
the American Civil War, the way the British really screwed the American rebels, who became America, was they cut off their salt supply.
Wow. Yep.
Right. And what actually happened was it got to the point where salt was actually worth more than gold because the American resistance or the rebel forces that became America today, they couldn't get enough salt. They couldn't preserve their meats properly. People were getting sick because they weren't getting enough salt in their diet.
Hmm.
That I guess that all makes sense. Were you aware of that from the American Civil War? It was a huge problem.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but it's no surprise because, well, the best, if you have a salt and you add it to your meal and it tastes salty, fundamentally there's too much salt, but it's because you've got the wrong salt.
Gotcha.
So if you've got something that's a lot more raw, say the Murray River salt,
Yeah.
basically you can add quite a lot of salt and it still doesn't have that salty taste to it. It
Gotcha.
actually enhances the flavor a lot more because
Yeah.
it's got the balance and the composition of the other trace minerals in there to balance out the sodium and the chloride.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So it's super interesting, but it's actually super important for health too, because it's at a biochemical level. Like if you don't have enough salt, your adrenals and things will just get completely cooked, and yeah, you'll be running out of your stress hormones pretty soon.
And that actually happened. This happened didn't only happen to me once, but going back to using the military example, um, I once did about 8 weeks of survival training in the Adelaide Desert in South Australia, right?
Wow.
Alamein training camp. I don't think it's still anyway. I'm sure people know that. And what happened to me was happened to a lot of people. You're doing the full-on survival training, so literally, it looks like Mars, right? During that, it's all
Hmm.
red, like a red desert. It looks like Mars with a few trees, right? Basically. So during the day, it would get up to 48, and
Oh my goodness.
at night, it would get to like -4 or something like that. So it's crazy, right? It's very, yeah.
very extreme. Yeah.
If you're going to do survival training in Australia, that's kind of, the place you're going to go. Anyway, and one of the biggest things they're always big on is they basically gave us, we had a lot of Gatorade sachets, right, that we'd have. They said basically have 4 of these a day. And what happened was if you forgot to have one, right, if you got to have
Mhm.
one, you would get the worst cramping. And one person, it was one of the poor ladies actually, she got really bad cramping that she had to withdraw from the exercise. It was that bad.
Wow.
Basically, she got all cramped up here from not enough salt. And yeah, she got really sick. I mean, that's sort of following on what you're saying, isn't it?
No surprise. Yeah, because what salt does is it, and not necessarily when I talk about salt, I'm not just talking about sodium and chloride. I'm talking about the minerals that make the
Yeah.
salt. So fundamentally, I'd say a good 60 to 80% of the population, it's not that they're lacking in certain minerals, but they're lacking in like the vast diversity of minerals that our body
Mm.
actually needs. Because what these minerals do is they send electrical signals. So our bodies are electrical, and that's how our brain communicates to our muscles, basically. So if you've got cramps and things like that, it's generally an indicator that it's not able to return the message from the
Yeah.
muscle to your brain very effectively or efficiently. So it'll
Yeah.
just have it on and hypertonic, and it'll just cramp up like that.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
it's not fun.
Oh, oh, great one. And your final tip, Sean, what's your final tip for us?
So the final tip is it's a bit of a mindset thing. So
Right.
this is something that I implored for myself.
Hmm.
Probably I don't know 2 years ago or so, and I always had it there, but
Yeah.
my brain was sort of shifting another direction, and
Hmm.
that's actually coming from an attitude of gratitude.
Ooh, I love
So
that one. I'm right into that. I'm totally into that. Continue. I'm right into what you're saying.
so yeah, if we can focus on the things that we have and the things we're actually grateful for, we're not so much focused on the things that we don't have and the
Yeah.
things that make us kind of away from that gratitude, and
Yeah.
I guess a lot more, what's the word, just neurotic and things like that. So
Yeah.
we're not necessarily just stuck in our head, but we're actually physically present when we're in gratitude, and we're actually a lot more grateful and just happy, I guess, in the moment. So yeah, that's my third
Oh,
tip.
love it. I gotta say, Sean, thank you so much for your thoughts. Just on as well. So I guess, of course, if anyone watching, if they want to get in contact with you, they can just add you on LinkedIn and you can help out anyone from across the world. Is that right, Sean?
That's it. Yeah. So anyone really who is struggling in any of these areas, like health, wellness, fitness, you name it, nutrition, that kind of thing, even mindset, like reach out. We want to be the kind of go-to people in Melbourne, in Victoria, but our reach is global. So yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Reach out.
I love Victoria. I'm a proud Victorian once upon a time. I finished off in St Kilda before I ended up leaving Melbourne for good and never turning back. So there you go.
I love it.
Yeah. Now I want to say a big thank you. Really appreciate you. If you are watching the recording of this or live, make sure you like, share, and comment. Get in contact with Sean. Just before you go, Sean, I'd love to hear a closing thought from you. What's your closing tip for everyone just to keep them going? Closing thought. Over to you.
Closing thought. Okay. Just remember that the human spirit can get like it can handle a lot more than you think it can handle. So just keep going. If you're feeling down, just keep moving forward. It's the moving forward part that actually helps us. So smash it.
Love your work. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Stay awesome, friends.
Thank you, Edward. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.